Hey, this is Captain Paul Brawley with Fish Finder Guide Service, and this is your week's edition of Texas Fishing Tips. Well, the tide is super high, and it's got the fish thinned out about as much as a monthly budget on this economy we're in. So, we're going to start out kind of recapping some of the stuff we were looking at last week, which has been still holding some fish on the higher tides. You're going to be looking behind all these spoils right here. Every one of them, starting from about the squeeze where the big sandbar comes out in North Nighthawk, all the way down to around here. Anything in this area right here has not had as many reds as this stretch along here. Now, you will encounter some wade fishermen and other people fishing through there, so pick your little island to fish behind. With the higher tide, I haven't been much more south on this backside, but I would imagine as far as here, there's probably some reds. But the main strip I've been doing is the strip where the National Seashore starts here, and I've been going down to the first big gap coming into Nighthawk here. I'm sorry, the first big gap coming into Nighthawk here. So this stretch all through here. The reds are pretty decent ones in there. They could be, from 22 up to around your upper slot range. And there are some smaller reds, but there's not many of them in there that are that size range. The reds that are in there have been feeding on cut bait, sardines specifically, maybe some cut skipjack or some cut finger mullet if you can get it. We've been busting up a couple of those sardines and making sure that we're getting a good slick started out, and then we're just free lining the sardines on like number 6 kell hooks. Just kind of throwing them out there. I'm either tying directly to braid if I feel like the hook has a good weld in it, or it's closed off enough that the braid's not going to slip through it. If your hooks have just a crimp down and they don't have a very good seal between on the eye of the hook, then you may want to put like a 30-pound shock leader and then do a uni to uni knot to your braid to keep you from losing fish and hooks, or hooks inside a fish, or fish with hooks that are coming out of those knots. Anyway, the backside of that is still working. Understand that the water's super high and these fish are scattered, and it's taking a lot more time to get the fish. Moving on across, we're starting to see some trout showing up behind these spoils right off the intercoastal edge all the way down, through about these islands here at Pure Oil. We're kind of looking at those with croakers. We're fishing all that edge. It's what you would do is you would come out of the intercoastal, you would get up on the bar and fish with croakers in that very first trough. So basically, the tide's high enough you can sit your boat right on top of the bar off of the intercoastal, power pole down, and you're going to be throwing with the wind towards either the backsides of these islands or the sand holes and stuff that are right off of the flat, using a number 6 kell hook and a croaker free lined. On croakers, I almost always use a shock leader, 30-pound shock leader, tied to the hook, and then uni to uni to my braided line. But that area all through there has been holding some trout on the higher tide. All right, we're going to be looking at this back edge over here on the back side of Nighthawk, beyond the big sandbar and on over to the Bird Island Channel, which would be this whole area right in here. The tide's up, so some of these fish are reintroducing themselves to all the back sand back there. You can get out on this back sand, all these little sandbars I'm circling right now. You can get out on those sandbars and walk down them. I would take your favorite paddle tail lure for reds with probably a 1/8 or a 1/4 ounce jig head. I prefer always using Knotty Hooker. Use Berkeley Power Baits, Bass Assassins, You can use some of your some of the Berkeley gulp shrimp, anything like that through there, looking for those reds. You're going to be wanting to cast out and try to lead the fish and kind of pop it and stop it around in front of them, see if you can get one to come. There will also be some drums trolling those sandbars, so you might want to take a little pocket full of shrimp or a little bag of shrimp in your pocket, so in case you see them, you can pull your plastic off real quick and put your shrimp on there and try to get it out in front of some of those drum. Seems like you should be able to get out there around 10 o'clock in the morning and fish that from like 10 to 1, maybe 10 to 2, trying to sight cast some reds and drums. If you come out here in front in this gap right here, this big gap has been holding some speckled trout. You can look in there with your freelining your croakers on your number 6 kell hooks, and you can use also live shrimp and corks if you want to make drifts through there if it's super windy. But right now I've been keying on the trout and some redfish using those croakers, so that might be a good plan for you also. All right, moving right along, there is a bunch of off-colored water out here a little deeper onto Emerald's Hole area. All through here's kind of got a big patch of brown water. But if you're looking a little further back in this area here, the water's still somewhat clear. And with that high tide, you ought to be able to catch some trout and reds through there with the croakers. I'm still freelining croakers. I know I'm pounding that a lot. And if you want to try to make these longer drifts through Emerald's Hole out here, I would suggest using live shrimp with popping corks, due to the fact that the water's real dirty and they'll make a lot more noise and attract a lot more attention. That brown tide has kind of creeped its way back in to that big section, and it's running all the way in this deeper water around in here. It's kind of about that big swath is where the brown, darker water is. Anything further east, say east on this grass line through here, seems to be where the clearer water is, and you could be any of those sand holes could be holding reds and speckled trout. We were on a really, really, really good trout bite out here, but as that high tide came up, so did that brown tide creep back in, and the trout that were just out on the drop that were just like crazy quick limits have kind of ceased. And so these fish are all scattered back on these bigger flats way back in here, all in this area. So you're going to have to pick sand holes out and just throw those croakers into the sand holes and wait it out. I've been getting 1, maybe 2 fish a stop. I'll pull up, throw 2 or 3 croakers into a sand hole, wait about 3 or 4 minutes. Somebody may catch a trout. As soon as they do, we're picking the power pole up and moving to the next sand hole. Because right now, the fish, with the tide as high as it is, they're not really moving. They're kind of sitting in their places, and so you have to go to them. They're not going to really come to you. And I have not found any particular place since the tide came up and the brown tide moved back into the deeper water where there's just a conglomerate of fish where you can sit there and pound them out. It is a lot of moving. I probably moved, 25 times in one session to catch a limit of trout right now. So you're just really having to move and move and move and move. Some of those sand holes, you'll waste your croakers. You won't catch anything. Some of the sand holes, you'll catch oversized trout, which are basically like catching nothing at this point because you're throwing them back. And then you'll move into a sand hole where you catch a couple, 1 to 2 nice fish and or one trout or maybe 1 red. Anyway, y'all have good luck this week. It's going to be high tide for a little while longer. I presume the tide's going to get higher because there's a lot of flooding up north, and it's just going to add to the water that's coming into our system, and it's already incredibly high. So you guys have good luck. Be courteous and just be patient because the fishing is a little slow right now.